today I have the very first guest on my podcast, the multifamily queen who has transacted over $900 million worth of assets in her portfolio. That M will soon be a B. And then is a Forbes Council member, one of 3 women that received the 2017 Politico Woman of the Year award, founder of Vive Funds, a philanthropist, excellent thought leader, and someone I greatly respect and look up to. Welcome, Veena Jetti.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here and to kick this off. What an honor.
The honor is mine, really, but
I don't know. I mean, I'm so excited to support you. I've seen you grow so much. I'm so excited for this next step of your journey.
Me too. And one of the things I wanted to talk about, kind of relaying off of that, is I know a lot of people that are in real estate or in business, right?
Yeah.
And want to enter multifamily. They want to be a GP or they want to be an LP, right? It really just depends. Yeah. What would you say to someone that is in real estate, maybe has, maybe they flipped a few houses, maybe they were in business, but they haven't been in real estate before, full time, and now they want to enter multifamily? Like, what would you advise someone like that to, how would they start?
Okay, so multifamily is like speaking a whole different language, right? It's not the same as single family in a lot of ways. The similarities are really that you are buying somewhere that you're going to have tenants and people living in your units. And so you have like a resident mindset. But other than that, it's very different. So first and foremost is showing up, right? That's like 90% of it is showing up, because it's hard, it's challenging, it's overwhelming. It's like drinking from taking a single sip from a fire hose, right? So showing up is like 90% of your key to success. And that's probably true for like any industry, to be fair. It's not multifamily specific. But the second is educating yourself, right? There's so much to know and so much to learn. You need a foundation. So you need to have certain vocabulary. You need to understand the basics of how we speak, right? Like, how am I interacting with a broker? After that, and I know these are not like specific to multifamily, but it's a business, it's an asset class just like any other asset class.
For sure.
There's not some kind of like secret for multifamily specifically that doesn't apply for other asset classes or other businesses. But the third is build relationships.
Right.
I will say that in multifamily, I think multifamily is more of a relationship business than even single family or any other asset class. Although those are also relationship businesses, in multifamily, you'll learn very quickly. It's very tough to transact on multifamily all by yourself. You need a team, whether it's partners or investors or vendors or people that you can collaborate with or someone selling to you. It's a relationship business. So start creating those relationships, build them with authenticity from a place of like genuinely wanting that connection, right? Genuine connection is really important in those relationships. So I think those are like the 3 tips, which are super broad and apply to every single business and every single asset class.
Well, I love that you talk about relationships, because even, you're partnered with your sister, which a lot of people are scared to partner with friends, with family, with spouses. They do get concerned about that because they think, well, how is this going to strain my relationship? Right?
Yeah.
So going off of that, what would you say is one of the key principles you take into investing or partnering, like with your sister or with friends, to make sure the relationship is not strained?
So the biggest thing for us is we always separate personal and business, and we don't really let the two intermix with each other. And what I mean by that, it's not that like we get together and we never talk about business. No, absolutely not. But when I have a business matter to discuss with my sister, I'm discussing business. And when I have a personal matter to discuss with her, like if I want to fight with her, right? She's my baby sister, so I still want to fight with her sometimes. So when I want to fight with her, I am calling her and having a conversation. And then if I need something on the business side, again, I'll be like, hey, listen, I need to switch to, business for a minute. And we both kind of understand and move to that cadence. The thing that's been really challenging for me, right, is She's my baby sister. I have literally been bossing her around for her whole entire life. And I love the idea of being able to do that just in more places. But the reality is, she's my partner. She is an adult. She is very smart. She's actually smarter than me. She's the smarter of the two of us. So my whole success has been built around finding people that are smarter than me and then just riding their coattails to success, right? And so with Priya, it's knowing and trusting that she's going to make a good decision and she's going to ask me for help when she needs it. And I think if you asked her the same question, her struggle has been finding the confidence, because for so long, she's always turned to me for advice and protection and whatever. And now I'm like, no, you have to go out and you have to make these decisions and mistakes and good decisions and good choices without me. And then come back to me when you need help or when you're struggling, or if you make a mistake and we need to fix it together, then we'll go into problem solving mode. But that's really how I think we both view that dynamic. And, I'll be honest, it's not something that we have perfect even now. It's very challenging, and it's something we have to make a conscious effort about day after day after day.
I know you mentioned the word challenge, which I love.
Yeah.
I love a challenge.
A lot of those.
And I can tell one of the challenges, I have heard you say you've raised over $1 million was your first deal when you were getting into multifamily.
Yeah.
And the part that sticks out to me is that you were willing to sell everything, even your husband's Porsche, right? To, make sure that it was going to happen, right? Yeah. Make sure that the $1 million is going to be raised. And so to me, I think that is admirable, because it's like, I'm going to let go of everything that I have to make sure that I make it happen. So what makes you be willing to do that instead of just giving up? Because giving up would be a lot easier.
I'm a crazy person, obviously. No, look, here's what it is when and this is who I am at my core. I just have a grit and a determination about anything that I want to do, that I will do it, right? And it's like, maybe it's like a manifestation, I don't know. But for me, it is, if I say I'm going to do it, I'm just going to do it. I'm not going to quit, and I'm going to do whatever I need to make it happen. My mom always says this. She's like, whenever Veena gets a bee in her bonnet, right? Because that's like such an old lady phrase to say, but that's what she says. And she's like, when Veena gets a bee in her bonnet, it's going to happen. And so, I think it was actually rather uncreative of me to think about selling the Porsche, because I was like, that's all I could think of at that time. I didn't have the knowledge base. I didn't have the rooms that exist today at that time to help guide me through this. I didn't have access to new partners or people that I could turn to with experience and knowledge that could have helped me through that. So it was actually a really uncreative solution if you think about it, because it was like, okay, I need money, I sell the things I own. Like nobody's ever thought of that idea before, right? Of course it's been thought of. But it was the idea that things are replaceable, right? And once I get to that next level, I knew that I could keep pushing forward, and I could buy him another Porsche at some point, but I need this right now.
Right. Well, I think it's very commendable. And I think that you do what I have heard a lot of people do when they achieve something great. They always undermine it, and they always try to, because it's like, it's not a big deal, because it's like, of course I'm going to do that, right? But to the average normal person, which we all are really normal, right? It's like, not everyone is willing to just lay it all out and just give everything to make sure it comes to pass, right? So it's commendable.
Thank you.
And one of the things I was going to say is, you mentioned entering into different rooms, right? How has that changed your life?
Oh my gosh, it's made me realize what a dummy I've been for years and years and years and years. I didn't know. Honestly, I have met people that I never thought I was going to meet. I have been in dinners with people that I have like admired for my whole entire life. And I've been around people who have just done so much more. So ironically, it's like something where I always get to learn from people that have done more than me or that are at that next level. But it also, nothing will make you feel like you are not doing enough than being in a room full of like uber successful people, right? Like I'm like, oh, yeah. Like I was just telling my cousin yesterday, I was telling her, I'm like, the rooms that I'm in now, like I am embarrassed when I have to say like I took a first class commercial flight because they're all like, why don't you have a plane? This is so weird. Like, what do you mean you had to go through security? What does that mean? You know, like, but that's the level of the rooms that I'm in now. And I mean, I would have never have guessed that that would be a normal conversation for me to be having 5, 10, 20, 30 years ago, right?
Right, right. And I think that one of the things that I think that you are about sustainable wealth because you talk about, you know, living below your means,
Mhm.
which has become pretty unpopular in this day and
Yeah.
age.
Yeah.
But that,
Right. Yeah.
right. And so you could you know, I don't know your financials, but you could possibly could have a jet, right? But you even talk about like owning a Kia and you're like, look, I'm one extreme or the other. I'm going to have
Yeah.
the Lamborghini. I'm going to have the
Totally.
Kia, right?
Totally. Totally. Yes.
What makes you make those decisions when you could easily go and buy, you know, a Mercedes, a BMW, a Range Rover, or whatever it is, right? And kind of just be one extreme or the other.
Okay, in full disclosure, right? We do have the luxury cars, so that is definitely not lacking for us. Um, but I really like quality and practicality, and a lot of times you don't necessarily get that in luxury purchases. But more importantly, we've always lived our life by buying liabilities with assets, right? We never spend active income on liabilities. It's just not sustainable for long-term wealth growth. So what we'll do is, let's say we have $1 million or $100,000, right? We have $100,000 that comes in from X working, like whether my husband's working, my working, whatever, like our active income. And we'll take that 100K and we'll go, and I don't go and buy a car, I don't go and buy a bag or a vacation or any of that. I take that 100K and I go and I invest it into an asset. So, you know, obviously it's mostly real estate. So when we invest into real estate, what'll then happen is that asset will throw off cash flow. And let's say it's $5,000 a year, right? It doesn't have to be a whole lot, but that $5,000 a year, then I'll take that and go and buy the vacation or the bag, or I'll put, you know, I leverage a lot. So I'll leverage a car note or whatever that is, right? So that's how we look at our cash flow. Is we don't use active income to buy liabilities. We use it to buy assets, and then our assets buy us our liabilities.
Love it. Love it. That's the way to sustainable wealth, in my opinion.
For sure.
But another thing I wanted to talk about was your husband, because
Mhm.
I can tell your family and your husband and from my perspective, it's a big part of who
Yeah,
you are.
it is.
So how did your husband, I know you guys have been married for 10 years, right? You and your husband.
Yep.
What made you choose your husband, and how did it enter into, you always mention he's your biggest supporter.
Yeah.
So how does that work with business and kids and, you know, all the different things that you guys are doing?
It's funny you're asking me this, because I say this to him all the time. I'm like, honey, like getting married is kind of a crapshoot, right? Like it could have gone one way or the other way. And I'm like, I met him when I was 25, and I was like, who let me make a decision to be married to the same person for the rest of my life when I was 25 years old? That's insane, right? Like, but that's why it could be a crapshoot, because going from like your 20s into your 30s, there's such a big change, like personal growth. Like when I first met my husband, I thought I was going to eventually be like a stay-at-home mom, and I thought I was going to be raising kids and like cooking and cleaning and this domestic goddess, right? spoiler alert, that did not happen. And I was definitely not interested in doing that. And I tried it for like 2 months when we were married. I was like, babe, I'm just going to be a stay-at-home mom without kids, right? Like just a stay-at-home wife. He was like, okay, if that's what you want to do. And I tried it and it was fun and it was great. And like, there's only so much you can shop. There's only so much you can brunch, especially when all your friends have to work.
Right.
And so it got really boring, like really fast. And more importantly, it was bothering me that all of the pressure of the finances were falling to my husband. And I was like, wait, if I go out and I can generate income for us, then we can both retire earlier and we can both live like a really great life and we can spend more time together. And so that was how I kind of like changed my view. And it was very short-lived. My stay-at-home wifing was very short-lived. I'm just not cut out for that life is really the reality of it. But yeah, I think how did I choose my husband? I mean, I got lucky in a lot of ways, but I chose him because of the qualities that were core to him, right? Like he's the most patient human on the face of the planet. Now that's dwindled a little with kids, but still more patient than the average individual, right? But he is also the most stable human on the face of the planet, and that's still true today. And so no matter what happens for me, you know, professionally or outside, or even like in a relationships with my friends and my family or whatever, I know that he's always going to be there and always be able to support me. And he's always going to cheer me on. And having that kind of like rock or cornerstone, just for all the chaos that's happening all the time, right? Like it never ends. One thing like resolves and then a new chaos arises. But having him be able to be that cornerstone for me has been a huge blessing. You know, and I think that he's always been very respectful. He's always been kind. And now that's not to say that like we don't have our fair share of disagreements or that there are not things that drive me crazy about him, but the core of who he is has remained true over our entire marriage. And what's happened is as I've grown professionally, I did worry. I was like, maybe he's not going to grow with me or he's not going to love the person that I am today. But luckily for us, we have been able to kind of evolve together or grow together versus him turning away from me, which can also happen when there's change. And quite frankly, like I wouldn't blame him if he was like, this is not who I married. This isn't what we had discussed. This isn't who you told me you were, because I wasn't this person 10 years ago.
Right.
But you know, he hasn't. And also I told him like he can't ever leave me because no one else will put up with me. So this is just like, I tell him all the time, I'm like, listen, honey, there's one way out of this marriage. So that's you. You make that decision.
That is hilarious. I thoroughly relate to that. But anyways, one thing I wanted to ask you about that you mentioned was kind of the chaos of life, right?
Yeah.
Because you're a wife, you're a mom, you're a daughter, you're a business owner, an investor, philanthropist. It's like there's always something going on. It never stops. No. So how do you handle I know you've told me this before, right? When I'm good in one area, the other area, right? But how do you do time management with all of that, right? Because I'm sure there's a bunch of people, whether they're in business or in real estate or whatever they're doing, you always have stuff coming up. So how do you deal with it?
Very poorly. I will tell you, time management is not really a strength of mine. I try to be good about it. Sometimes I'm just efficient because I don't have a choice. Like I have to get a certain amount of things done by certain deadlines, so I have to do it. But because I'm such an extreme extrovert and I live in these types of conversations, it's very hard for me when I have an external conversation with somebody to be like, okay, we have 15 minutes. That's it. I'm so bad at it. My admins actually always like schedule in buffers for me because they know inevitably I'm not going to stick to the time frames. It's the same reason I show up to the airport like super early, because I know that I have people there I have to meet and talk with. I don't know who they are before I get there, but I know that they're there. And so I need like a solid amount of time to like find
Absolutely.
them and introduce myself and ask them all about the history of their lives. So I think that that is something that I'm probably not the best at, but I try to be better. I try not to, I don't like really open social media during the day while I'm like, while I'm on stuff. I don't try to like open social media as much because it's distracting for me. So when I do come and like when I'm hanging out in like my Facebook group, right, like our community there, or I'm answering questions, it's very intentional that I'm there and I spend that time there. And I do check in multiple times. But for me, that's like my break from working, but it's still kind of more work. So I guess it depends how you see it.
Right. Work is fun for you,
Yes,
essentially.
I love it.
Love that. So one of the things I also want to talk about is you are a woman
Yeah.
CEO, right?
Yeah.
Founder.
Yes.
And minority, of course, right? Which I love.
Yeah.
And you have implemented policies in your business that I don't typically hear about, right? So things like flexible scheduling, work from home options, childcare coverage, and IVF family planning coverage, right?
Yeah.
So what are the benefits of implementing this in a business?
Well, I think one, at least in my experience, we have had much better work output when we don't micromanage our employees and when we hire the best and we trust them to perform at the best levels. I will say it's a little bit selfish too, because I really hate micromanaging people. Like it's the bane of my existence. So I just don't want to manage you. I don't want to track your hours. I don't want you to ask me if you can go and take an extended lunch or go to a doctor's appointment or have brunch with your girlfriend that's in town. Like I don't care about any of that. What I care about is your work is done. You're accessible when I need you to be accessible. And I will respect the boundaries of your personal life too, because what you don't want is you don't want employees that get burned out. That's not going to be good for anybody. And then it causes more issues for me. But also, and I think maybe this is a little bit more importantly, so it's the culture, right? It's a company culture we wanted to put out there. It's the company culture that we wanted to instill, and it's how we live our lives. Like my sister and I do the same thing. I have friends or family that come in town and I'll take a half day or I'll take an extended day. I'm always available. I'm always checking in, but I'm taking the time to do the things that are important for me and for my mental health and my family. So one, it's a company culture, but two, and I think more importantly, you attract better talent like this because good talent doesn't need to be micromanaged, and they probably don't work really well with micromanagement. And so what happens is women a lot of times, especially if they're mothers or they're married, and obviously not every woman is, but a lot of times by the time they're a little bit further in their career, they may have other obligations, or a lot of times women are also the default caregiver for elderly parents, right? Or even siblings or nieces and nephews that need support. That's women do a lot of this labor. Obviously not all women, and it's not only women, but the majority are. And so to attract really great talent, I truly believe that we can't have 100% of the C-suite being all men. Otherwise, we've skipped over many qualified women that deserve to be there, but maybe they have a slightly different situation. Like maybe they have a child who has special needs or that's training to be like a pro athlete or something like that, right? And like, I don't want to lose someone because they have a priority that they cannot turn the other way from. I'd rather learn how we can work around it and how we can make it a good fit for both of us. And so I've noticed that we've attracted a lot more of the traditional or primary caregiver into roles in our company when we have these different things. And actually, the interesting thing that's happened is we've had men that have joined our company and they're like, I love that my family can still be a priority to me. And because that narrative is changing, right? It's not the narrative anymore that, okay, the man has to go out and make all this money and support the household and then, bring home the bacon so the woman can fry it up. Like, that's just not the narrative that we have in today's society. And, we just recently hired a guy who's awesome. He's incredible. And he said to me, he's like, because he doesn't have kids yet. And he said to me, love that when if we decide to start a family, like, you care about that. And I'm like, yeah, of course we do, because this is just an extension of your family. That's how I want it to feel for you here. So it's definitely made a difference to the quality of people that we attract, the quality of candidates, and to the work output that we get.
I love that. Love that so much. And one of the things that you always talk about that is kind of related is just women and diversity, right? The C-suite, which you mentioned, which I know because I've heard you many times.
Yes.
It's not because we don't like, white Caucasian men. Actually, we love them,
Yeah.
but we want to see more diversity. So what are your thoughts about that? Because it's not something that's typically talked about, and who better than you to mention it?
For the longest time, I never talked about it because I always worried that people would see me and think, oh, she just hates like men, or she hates white men. And like, that's so far from the truth. It's like a little bit laughable, right? Because white men some of them have given me the biggest leg up and the biggest hand up and the biggest support. And they still to this day are some of my best friends. They're some of my closest friends. But my philosophy stems from, our company was built on only working with the best, right? And so if I say that, and then we work with companies, let's say we hire a marketing company, right, that only has white men in the C-suite across, call it 10 executives. Okay, are they really the best? Can they really be the best? Because they have no diversity or representation. So they're missing these whole massive segments of people that I want to be speaking to. And so the diversity of thought, the diversity of experience, the diversity of background can really help companies avoid making certain mistakes. They can help them reach new audience. They can help them grow bigger. They can add new ideas. They can innovate more, right? And so I just refuse to believe that any company with several C-suite members that are all white men, I just refuse to believe that they're the best of the best, because either we're saying that women are not qualified, which I very much disagree with, obviously, or we're saying we don't really create those opportunities enough for women to be in that upper echelon of management. And to me, that is a massive, actually one of the biggest mistakes I think companies make, is not prioritizing it enough. And I'm at a point now in my career where my resume speaks for itself. I don't have to prove myself as much as I did to get into these rooms, right? So my resume will speak for me. And so now I feel like it's an obligation for me to point this out, because my voice is respected, my voice is heard, and I feel I can explain it in a way where every single person I've ever said this to, who runs a company who doesn't have diversity, is like, wow, I never thought about that. That's a great point. And they don't do it on purpose. It's just who their networks are. It's who they're around. And there's no specific intention to do this. And so when I say this to them, they'll go, wow, I'm so embarrassed. Like, I can't believe that this was not. Well, this is exactly why diversity is important, right? Because if you had a woman, or you had a minority at the top levels, they probably would have pointed out that this is a concern, or this is a weak spot for the company. And so that's why it's really important.
I love that. And I think they enter into groupthink, basically, right?
Yes.
Everyone thinks the exact same thing. There's no invention. There's no new product or service. It's not, because it's not just multifamily, right?
No,
it's like
anywhere.
There's no innovation.
Exactly.
So I love that. But the other thing I kind of wanted to talk about was kind of your challenges, right? And obstacles.
Yeah.
Because if people don't know your resume, they very quickly will know it, especially with the amount of brand building, and just like, you have your Facebook group, you're on all social media. I mean, it's amazing. So, but I want to talk about the struggle, because I think everyone can relate to some kind of failure, some kind of struggle, some kind of challenge. And often the people that don't continue persisting, it's because they stayed in that and they thought,
Yeah.
now I didn't have a failure, they think I am one, right?
Mhm.
So you can share as much as you want, but what were some of your kind of, I guess, failures or obstacles or challenges?
Mhm.
And what did you learn from them? What kept you from staying in that, I guess?
Oh gosh, there's so many. And honestly, they happen all the time, even now, right? Like you don't stop having challenges or failures. What happens is you get better at addressing them and solving those issues. Gosh, there's so many. You brought up social media. I've been building my brand. It's something I've been focusing on a lot this last year. That's actually still a really big challenge for me because I've shared in one of our Zoom calls that we do on our Facebook group, but like I have imposter syndrome like crazy. And
Crazy to me.
it feel so vulnerable to be out there on social media. So I have imposter syndrome. I also, I don't know what I'm doing. Like I actually don't know what I'm doing when it comes to building a brand. And the rooms I'm in are filled with people who are great, right? And I'm emulating them and I'm asking them for advice, and they're just pouring into me, which in turn I'm turning around and trying to pour back into the community that we have on Facebook. But that's a really big challenge, and that's something I still do today. And the other problem with it is I'm a perfectionist, right? So if the lighting isn't right and I'm not dressed and I haven't thought of the exact thing I want to say, or if I say it the first time and I stumble and I mince my words, I want to go back and re-record the whole thing, which takes hours and hours and hours, and you fall into the spiral of recording and recording and recording and recording, and you're the only one that really sees those imperfections. The way that I've gotten kind of past it, or I challenge my beliefs there, is in doing it over and over and over. It's a muscle. The more you do it, the easier it gets, right? It's like the first time I bought a deal or the first time I raised capital is really hard. But once you've done it 10 times or 100 times or 1,000 times, it's far easier because you get better at it. So that's something I'm still trying to get better about. That's a current challenge I have. I've had many challenges in the past, man. Which one do you want to know about? It's so many. It's so many. And that's one thing I hate about social media is it's like the highlight reel for everybody, right?
Yeah,
So yeah, if you look at my social media, it says like all the great things, but it's not going to tell you the challenges that I faced, or it doesn't go into a deep dive about the days where I'm like, oh my gosh, I just quit. I'm going to just quit and I'm not going to do this anymore. It's not going to tell you about the times like I ugly cry when I'm missing my kids and I have mom guilt, right? Like those are not things that you really see on my social media because the brand is not dedicated toward talking about the realness of what happens for me.
right. Yeah, I completely understand that.
Yeah.
But one of the things I wanted to ask too was, I mean, before you didn't have a seat at this hypothetical table, right? And so what were some of the beliefs that you had to overcome now that you do have a seat at this table and you're surrounded by these uber successful people about yourself? Because I think that there must be some that you've had to overcome, right?
There's many. Let's see. The first one being, do I belong here? I'm oftentimes in rooms where I'm just in awe of the people around me that I'm like, are they like, and this is probably my imposter syndrome still coming out, right? But I'm like, do they mean to invite me? Or is there like another Veena Jetti? Or, I don't know. But that's one. Two, I don't have to have the same priorities as everybody else does just because they're successful at their thing, or they do X, Y, and Z with their funds. It doesn't mean that I have to do the same thing. I can do something completely different. And I can prioritize what works for my life. And that's a huge mindset shift for me. But also the biggest thing for me that I learned from these rooms is it's not really like a challenge of being in these rooms. It's really something I learned is like, I can do so much more than I thought was, because I see it happening around me. And I can start asking the question like, okay, it has to be somebody. Why can't it be me? why shouldn't it be me? And there might be a good reason for it, but it doesn't mean that it's not possible.
Love that. And then, okay, so all those other questions, I thoroughly thought about a lot of them and all that, but these are now like the last two questions. And
Okay.
these are really my questions, right?
Okay, let's do
Because
it.
I'm thoroughly interested. You have imposter syndrome, which is just insane to me to hear because of your resume, right?
Yeah.
But what is it that keeps you humble? Because I really admire that. Like, that's one of the most admirable traits that you have, and your poise. But I would say your humility. Like, I don't know what keeps you humble, and I'm just interested, really.
No, I appreciate that. And it's funny because I get this feedback a lot. Like when people meet me in real life or they get to talk to me one, they're like, oh my gosh, you're so humble. And I remember coming home from a conference once after I heard it like 7 or 8 times, right? And I'm like getting ready for bed with my husband. I'm like, honey, I don't know if this is like just a compliment or if people think I'm gonna be this like huge jerk. And then they're surprised when I'm not. I'm like, maybe I come across like a jerk in social media. So I started asking people.
You don't. It's a compliment. I promise it's a compliment. I never thought you would be a jerk.
Yeah, I know you are definitely meaning it as a compliment because I know you. But like at first when it happened, I was like, oh my God, I'm coming across as such a jerk on social media. Everyone thinks that I'm going to be like, and my husband's like, no, it's not that. He's like, think of like somebody that you really admire in business. And when you meet them, if they are genuine with you and they interact with you, then you're going to walk away feeling like, oh my gosh, they were humble because you have this preconceived idea of all the greatness that they've done in their portfolio or whatever it is, their business or whatever achievement it is that you admire. And he's like, so that's why they're saying it. And I was like, okay, see, that's what I mean about him keeping me like centered, grounded, right? But I mean, like for me, I just love people and I'm just like a regular person. Like everything happens the same for me as it does for everybody else. And yes, I've like done these things on my resume, but the reality is like when I started, someone took me seriously too. Someone answered my questions too. And I really feel a responsibility that especially as a woman, right? If you get, and a minority, if you get to a certain level of success, it is my responsibility to reach back and lift the next generation or next wave up, right? And so for me, I love getting to know people. I love talking to people. Like I really mean that. I more early just to talk to the people that are there. I'll talk to someone in the grocery store line. I will talk to, like, I've never met a stranger. They're just friends I haven't talked to yet. Right. and I'm like, I am that person. Like I once met somebody on a plane. I've met many people on planes, but the craziest story, and I know you didn't ask me this, is I met this person on a plane. We were both coming back from Paris and I had sent my husband home like 2 days before I did. Because really I wanted to like shop and eat and look at all the hot French dudes without him there, right? Like it's like, you grab like a glass of champagne and watch all the people walking by me. No, I'm joking. But so anyway, I'm on the plane home from Paris and there's this lady in the seat next to me and she starts putting up like all of her bags, like from everything she bought. And I was like, ooh, what'd you buy? And like, like we're talking and stuff and she lives here in Dallas and she's still my friend to this day. This is like 5 years ago. And like, we actually meet and we talk and we text and she's on my Christmas card list. But those for me are important connections because I love learning about people and I love just meeting good people from different walks of life. And so I don't know if that answers your question.
It does 100%. Okay. And that kind of goes into my next question, which is, I know that you are, by multitude of ways, bringing a next generation into multifamily or business or like whatever it is, but right now it's multifamily, but women and minorities. So what are other ways that you do that maybe, we don't hear about?
Oh gosh. Well, first and foremost, I talked a little bit earlier about like how we only work with vendors. We're very strict on that. We actually enforce that in our company. So we fired a vendor recently because they did not have diversity in the C-suite. And I told them very clearly that they needed diversity in the C-suite. So they knew about it. They didn't have it. We did not renew our contract. I also, I provide a lot of like mentorship, or inadvertent mentorship, I should say, because it's not like a formal thing, but I do try to respond back when someone is asking me questions. I spend a lot of my time at conferences. I actually hang out with I go to all the VIP dinners, and I try to hang out like in the hallways and stuff when I'm not speaking, so that I can help answer those questions, because I'm already there. I might as well, make it useful for somebody to learn something and get whatever problem they have solved. But I think one of the biggest things that I do that would support women, minorities, and others in the space is just trying to be as transparent as possible with information and experience, because there's not a lot of transparency in this arena. And you've been on enough of my Zoom calls to know, I don't hold back. I don't try to hide. I feel vulnerable doing it. I really do. But I know that it is helpful for somebody else. Even just one person, it's worth it for me. But talking about challenges and the real meat and potatoes, it's something that I do in my Zoom community, because our community is a safe space for everybody, and that has to apply to me too, right? And so it allows me to be more vulnerable. And also, I'll say, from your previous question about being humble and down to earth, it really helps when you are totally able and willing to make a total fool of yourself and just roll with it. I'm totally fine being the butt of my own jokes and making mistakes, but I think all of those things kind of just embody who I think I am as a person.
I love that. And I know her family and her husband, everybody is a huge supporter of Veena Jetti, but I'd like to think I am also a really big supporter. But, I wanted to just end it with, I know you mentioned your Facebook group, which is Mastering Multifamily with Veena Jetti on Facebook, and I'm obviously a part of that group. I obviously think it's the best group to learn multifamily in, and but Veena's Vault is also another thing that you have on there. Any other thing you want to mention? Huh?
And you have an affiliate link now too.
Yes, I do, which I will add to the bio of the YouTube channel. But any other places that people can find you other than that, other than vivefunds.com or kind of Facebook group?
Oh, you might not know this. I actually launched VeenaJetti.com as a place, because in the group I keep getting the same questions over and over and over, and I was like, we need a central location, because I can't go and find 1,800 links. I can't ask my mods to do that. So I was like, let's put it all onto VeenaJetti.com. You can go there. You can follow all of my social from there. It's just Veena Jetti on Instagram and TikTok and whatever, YouTube. It's Veena Jetti 1, I think. So there's plenty of places to find me, but if you just go to my Facebook group or VeenaJetti.com, you'll be able to find it.
Love it. Well, you heard it here first, guys, and hope you guys enjoy everything that Veena has to offer. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I loved this. This was so much fun. I appreciate you.